Psalm 8, verse 6. In the prior verse, we saw man being lowered than the angels, but crowned with glory and honor, and how that was applied by Hebrews to Jesus. Now we're going to see some of the implications of that and make yet another connection to Christ as well. Let's read it. Ke kat estesas auton, epita erga ton cheron su, panta hupetaxis hupokato ton padon autu. Well, let's begin with this first verb here after the kai. This is from katistemi. You see a S plus an AS on the end. This is a second singular aorist active indicative. It means something like to appoint or to set over, something like that. And so this is referring to God setting him, that is this man who is crowned with glory and honor. And he is appointed over, epi ta erga, over the works, ton keron, of the hands. And we see that they are the hands of God. So he is set or appointed over the works of God's hands. And then things get really interesting. We have the neuter plural all here, everything, all things, heaven and earth and so forth. Hupetaxas, and this is from hupotasso. You see an S under the hood there. You see a lengthening right here and an AS ending. That's yet again a second singular aorist active indicative. Hupotasso means to, at least when it's sort of active with respect to you, this would be the word for to submit. But given that it's God doing it to someone else, this would be something like to make, subject, or even just to subject someone. So everything you have subjected, hupokato, and you can probably tell with the hupo here, this is beneath. So this is beneath ton padon autu. This is beneath his feet. So though man is lower than the angels, the special privilege of man is that he is, by virtue of the creation ordinance and so forth, he is over the works of God's hands, and all things have been submitted beneath his, or subjected beneath his feet. Now that may sound familiar because this is very famously applied to Christ in 1 Corinthians 15. In fact, this last little bit's also in Hebrews 2. We saw that in the prior video. We're going to focus in on 1 Corinthians 15, where as part of Paul's very beautiful discussion of the bodily resurrection of Christ being the first fruits of our resurrection and so on, he says this: the last enemy to be destroyed is death. And then he doesn't necessarily do a full citation. This is a bit subtle. I did put it in quotations here, but this doesn't have a full introductory as it has been written, something like that. But it clearly is from Psalm 8:6-4. God has put all things in subjection under his feet. So he does supply the subject here. And if you look at the Greek, it goes from being a second singular to a third singular, because instead of saying you, it goes to God. So Paul slightly tweaks the verb form there. But he has put all things in subjection. There's the hupotasso there. That's one way to render it. Now, one thing that Paul does here, apparently either this is the source he's using or maybe this is how he recalls it. He doesn't say hupokato. He just says hupo, but the general sense is the same. He put all things in subjection under his feet, referring now to Christ. Then he goes on to say, but when it says all things are put in subjection, so he's now riffing on what this is, it is plain that he is accepted. That is, this doesn't involve the one who put all things in subjection under him, namely God the Father. And so he's not submitting all things to himself in a certain sense, or he's not under the submission that he is himself submitting. But then he says, when all things are subjected to him, that is to Christ, then the Son himself will also be subjected to him who put all things in subjection under him. And so there's quite an interesting theological situation going on here that expresses the nature of submission within the opera ad extra, the ad extra works of God. Terrible handwriting there. Sorry about that. Let me rewrite that. The works of redemption. So within the ontological Trinity, Father and Son are consubstantial, fully equal in all power and glory. And strictly speaking, in that understanding, from eternity past, there is no mutual subjection, if you will. There is, Father, Son, eternal begetting, but not subjection. But in terms of the lordship of Christ, the defeat of death, his own suffering and death that we saw in Hebrews 2, Christ as to his incarnate works in redemption, and being the Messiah at the right hand and accomplishing all that entails, he is submitting to him, that is the Father, who is in fact putting all things under him, that is the Son. So there is this way in which the Son submits to the Father, but the Father is putting all things, tapanta, under the feet of the Son. So even in the opera ad extra, as opposed to the opera ad intra, there is this glorification, this high status of the Son. So not to get too systematic theology here, but it is quite interesting that 1 Corinthians 15 does play on Psalm 8:6 to express in terms of the economic Trinity, that is the works of redemption. There is a Father submitting everything under the Son submitting to the Father so that he might be all in all, kind of dynamic, and it's all derived almost verbatim from the Greek Septuagint of Psalm 8:6. So fun stuff this morning.